Here at Group IB, we focus very heavily on investigating new TTPs from fraud actors, looking at different tools and techniques that they use to conduct fraud against your online bank or e-commerce web pages or mobile applications. And of course, as fraudsters continue to change their tools and techniques and work together, frankly, to sell these tools online, and as more and more of your customers do business online, especially in the COVID world that we live in nowadays, I think it's really important to collaborate with other organizations who have different skill sets. GBG is one of those trusted partners for Group IB, and it brings me great pleasure to introduce Luke Ashley from GBG, who will speak a little bit about GBG and introduce how Group IB has jointly created a solution for the market to help provide a full end-to-end fraud hunting capability and prevention solution. And then later on in today's webinar, we'll also hear a little bit from two of Group IB's specialists who focus on anti-fraud to talk a little bit about some of the modern fraud techniques. So Luke, thank you very much for joining us today. I'll hand it over to you to tell us a little bit more about GBG and some of the solution sets that GBG uses to prevent fraud. Thank you for being with us.
Yeah, thank you, Nick, and thank you firstly for inviting me along today. I think the other thing I would just add is that we've got a Q&A panel as part of this, so there'll be some poll questions that come up as part of the presentations. But if at any point there are questions that any of our attendees have today, then please put them in, and we'll after moderating them, we'll have a look at them and hopefully answer them. So let me start, and I'll share my screen, and we can get straight into the content today. So hopefully what we'll provide you today with really are things that you can take away and actually get meaningful insight from as part of this. So if we can get into the presentation, we've probably done the hardest part. So I read somewhere actually that can you see my screen and am I on mute were two of the most used phrases in 2020. So I'm hoping now that I've passed that first test and you can all see my screen and hear me. I'll get some alarm bells undoubtedly ringing on my phone if you can't. So I guess I should probably start by introducing myself. So as Nick says, I'm Luke Ashley from GBG. I've been with GBG for over 11 years. And in that time had a number of different roles, but typically helping organizations across the UK and across Europe as well to make better decisions right the way through their customer journey. So over those 11 years, I've become increasingly fascinated really with the concept of identity and what we mean by identity, and how businesses like yourselves really can utilize this concept of identity and identity data to make better decisions about your customers. And actually, it's been quite interesting to chart over sort of 10 years how that concept of identity data has shifted, and what we mean by that has shifted over time. So I remember kind of, if I think back 10, 11 years, if you'd have spoken to somebody about what they meant by identity data, they probably would have said something like a name, an address, perhaps a date of birth, typical things that you might maybe find on an identity document or a passport. But I think we've seen a massive shift over the last 10 years in what we now consider to be part of an identity. So I think nowadays, realistically, we look at things like, of course, email addresses, telephone numbers, but also things like device ID, social media profiles, IP addresses, even the cookie trails that we all leave through the internet in our day-to-day. These would now be things that we would consider as part of identity, whereas we once wouldn't. And I think the opportunities and challenges that that presents for organizations in considering the way that they interact with their customers is changing as that landscape of identity changes too. So as I say, I'm going to talk specifically today about how organizations can make better decisions at point of onboarding an application. So I should probably start by telling you a little bit about who GBG are and what it is that we do. Well, in essence, we would call ourselves a global identity fraud and compliance specialist. And what that really means is that we help organizations like yourselves to make better decisions, typically at 4 key stages in the customer lifecycle. So customer onboarding and application is what we're going to talk about and focus on today. But we also have solutions around transaction and even point of collection as well. I've pulled out some key stats there at the bottom, a little bit about GBG, but in essence, what you can see from that is that this is something that we've been doing for a long time. There's a lot of us. We're doing it right the way across the globe. It's a truly global solution that we provide to quite a large customer base. But I guess probably that number at the far right there is the most interesting, in that our solutions comprise partnerships with over 200 different data providers. And that's really important. And I think Nick referenced it right at the top of this, is that organizations now need to be able to rely on lots and lots of different data sources to make the best available decisions when it comes to onboarding. So I speak every day with businesses across the globe really about customer onboarding, and one of the things that always they come back to is what they define as a balancing act. So how do organizations like yourselves strike a proper balance? They're trying to strike a balance between creating a frictionless onboarding journey for their customers, whilst recognizing that they're operating in probably the most complex and threatening fraud and compliance landscape than we've ever known before. As consumers, we expect an onboarding journey to be frictionless and seamless, but as a business, we need to recognize that, but we also need to balance that against the threats that we face in 2020. So to dig into that a little bit more, I'm trying to provide a few relevant statistics for you here. Something that I found fascinating was that in the year to date in 2020, the financial services sector actually suffered the worst rate of customer abandonment in any of the vertical markets. So for clarity, what we mean by customer abandonment rate is that if you imagine in this instance, you bring 100 customers to your front door, approximately 84 of them you're going to lose during that onboarding journey, which is a staggering amount, especially when you consider the amount of money that goes into sales and marketing efforts to get customers to your front door. To lose 84% of them as part of that onboarding journey, is a colossal waste and also an opportunity missed for organizations. So why is it typically that consumers are dropping off as part of that onboarding process? Well, Sales Cycle have done some really good research into this and found that the top reason really is the amount of information that organizations are requesting as part of that onboarding journey. Coupled with that then is the amount of time that it takes to get through all of those forms. And in some instances, the fact that actually as part of that onboarding journey, we're requiring users maybe even to go into a branch or a local post office to provide identity documents. So you can see there the challenge that organizations face is that if they don't get this onboarding journey right and they don't make it frictionless, they're going to lose customers, and they will of course go somewhere else. That, of course, has to be balanced, though, against the fraud landscape that I've talked about. And I've got some UK-centric statistics here, but appreciate there's people from right across the globe. And actually, these trends are global. What we're seeing in the UK is that approximately £1.2 billion last year was lost through fraud, and 17.4 million of that was lost at point of application. So we can start to see how this balance is really important, because on the one side, we've got that customer experience that we've talked about, but actually the fraud risk there is incredibly prevalent and increasing with complexity all the time. What we've seen, we have to mention it, of course, is that COVID-19 I would describe as kind of the great accelerator. It's accelerating a lot of trends that were already kind of happening. And probably the most relevant to the conversation today is this concept of digitization. The idea that more and more of traditional processes that were kind of analog or face-to-face or manual are being brought online and being made digital. And with that, for organizations like yourselves, of course, comes lots and lots of different opportunities, but also it does present additional threats. And we're going to talk about some of those both in this presentation and throughout the webinar today. So what does all of that mean, that balancing act? What does that mean to you as an organization? Well, in our experience, we typically are finding now that organizations can no longer rely on traditional manual human fraud detection techniques. The threat out there is too sophisticated, frankly, and also the risk of getting the customer experience process wrong is too great as well. So the fight against fraud really must contain multiple partner capabilities as part of what you're delivering. That might be through multiple vendors, it might be through accessing multiple data points, but to simply rely on a single source of data nowadays is just not going to provide the level of protection that you need within your organization. However, whilst it's very easy for me to say that, and partner organizations like ourselves to be able to provide you with the tools and the data and the technology to make better decisions, ultimately where that balance should be struck is down to you as an organization, and you should always fight for your right to retain where that balance is struck and where that line is drawn. As I say, we can provide, and there are organizations, of course, out there that can provide you with the tools and technology to do that. But you should always retain that balance yourself. And it's a business decision as to how much risk you're willing to accept as part of that customer onboarding journey. So I'd like to kind of bring this to life, if I may, by using a real life use case that actually charts the onboarding workflow of a anonymized, of course, but large consumer finance house in Europe that we've set up for them, and it enables me to show what a good process might look like. So this might be slightly bewildering at first instance, but I will walk through it step by step and hopefully give clarity to it. So everything, of course, starts with an application, and that starts with a consumer providing some form of application data to us. Now that might come from any channel. It might come from a desktop browsing experience. It may be that you have your own app for collecting application data, or it may be that it's traditionally through a branch or even a call center. But that application data would be collected and moves through then to our workflow. And this is where we can start to enrich some quite basic application data to enable you to make better decisions. And to Nick's point at the start of this is where collaboration becomes increasingly important, because we're big believers that actually to rely on, as I say, on a single source of data doesn't provide you with adequate protection. So if we take that application data, we can then use our workflow to orchestrate out to lots and lots of different capabilities to enable you to enrich that application data and make better decisions. So great examples of these will be the Group IB cybersecurity solution, which we're going to talk about in a lot more detail today, that enables us to assess the fraud risk of a specific device that an individual is using. We can also couple that then with GBG's own electronic identity verification solution, whereby we can verify the identity of approximately 4 billion people across the globe. We may also choose to utilize our alternative credit scoring capability, whereby we can take an individual's smartphone and look at some characteristics that exist on their smartphone to make a risk assessment about that person. So things like the types of apps that they have on their phone, the number of contacts perhaps that they have in their phone, the number of calendar entries that they have in their phone, can all be compiled together to produce a risk assessment score about that person. It may be as an organization that actually you have existing partnerships that are adding value at the moment, and we can leverage those and plug those into any solution as well. We also have our own suite of document validation technology, so that if you wish to add documents as part of your onboarding journey, then that can be done through this as well. GBG Locate is a market-leading address data product, which is incredibly important when it comes to fighting fraud for a number of different reasons. Whilst we can talk about sophisticated things like device intelligence, a lot of the decisions that we make are underpinned by address data and good quality address data, and GBG can help with that as well. It's also quite interesting when we look at this idea of address and compare that with other things in the fight against fraud. So to give you a specific example, if we see on an applicant's application data that they are applying from an address in London, but compare that with where their device is located, for example, in Africa, that might actually flag as a potential fraud risk. So the ability to link and understand two separate data capabilities can actually be incredibly important in the fight against fraud. We can of course, leverage PEPs and sanctions data, and also traditional credit reference data still plays a part in the fight against fraud and making a credit or risk decision. So we're taking that very, very simple application data and we're enriching it with all of these different capabilities. What we can then do is call out to internal databases that you already hold. So it may be that you store previous bad applications. It may be that you have your own blacklists. We can be matching against all of that as part of that initial decisioning. Through that workflow, then we can apply our rules. So we at GBG have about 200 different fraud rules that we've built up over the years of doing this, but you can add and edit your own rules within that. But ultimately, what we're trying to do there through all of this is produce a score. So from asking the consumer to provide very, very little application data to reduce that friction, we can then enrich the information, apply rules to it, and create a score. And all of this can be done within just a few moments, at which point we're able to either go on to pass that individual. So hopefully in most instances, very quickly, we can onboard that customer and they can have a great customer experience and not become one of the 84 out of the 100 that go on to abandon. In some instances, we can very quickly deny that individual if they're just somebody not that we don't want to do business with or that we recognize as a fraudulent application. And in that instance, we'd use that intelligence to feed back into our internal data set so that we can store that and reference it in the future. And it will always be the case that there is a middle ground in that there are people that we can't approve immediately, there are people that we can't deny immediately, and in which case you can use our case management and link analysis technology to be able to investigate those edge cases in a bit more detail. So hopefully that brings what I've been talking about to life a little bit. This is a real life example of a customer onboarding workflow, and as you can see, it enables you as an organization to strike that balance in that you can collect quite a small amount of information, but enrich that to still make a proper decision about a consumer. So I guess in summary, we would argue that that balance can be struck through the combination of data, technology, and expertise, which means that you need to be asking your customers for less data, which will reduce the friction that they face in that customer onboarding experience, while still protecting against fraud, but also ensuring compliance. So I hope that's given you some interesting insight into customer onboarding and the way that that is being done by various organizations across the globe. There are obviously things that we can follow up with on that, but I think what we're going to do is take the opportunity now to move to a poll. So we'd be keen to get your thoughts and your opinions on priorities when it comes to customer onboarding.
And Luke, if you turn your attention towards the public chat, there are a number of questions for you.
Yeah, absolutely.
Perhaps you.
Yeah, I'll just work through these.
I had some more for you as well after.
Yeah, thank you. So we've got a full Q&A at the end where we can, I guess, go into a lot more of these. But I think one of these that we've looked at here is, does this only deal with application frauds? That's a great question. Thank you, Tambir. So the solution or the workflow that I just went through there is geared towards point of application, absolutely. However, we have solutions that can be deployed further downstream. So namely, a point of transaction. And typically where things work best is actually where we link the two. So when we want to be able to use the information that we're gathering at point of application and feed that into anything that we do at transactional level, because actually they can feed off each other quite well and add intelligence from one to the other. Let me just try and process some more of these. Yeah, so we've got one there about application fraud. Can we deploy a model? So I think if I'm trying to understand exactly what that means, I guess the workflow and rules that we that are sat within the system are entirely configurable at a business level. So this isn't a solution whereby you'd need to come back to us or work with your IT team to to make configurations to that, but then absolutely that would go into a scorecard that is entirely configurable by yourself as well. Yeah, so there's a point there about I think if I've understood that correctly, data retention legislation within each jurisdiction, which is correctly pointed out, varies from jurisdiction to jurisdiction, and in Europe that typically is governed by GDPR. And all of the solutions that we would deploy with clients would obviously recognize that and be in line with that. So I think that's everything for the moment. As I say, I hope that was of value. There is the opportunity at the end of this to ask more questions. If anything, perhaps that I've answered there hasn't been answered to satisfaction, please clarify if appropriate. And with that, I will pass over to my colleague Pavel.
Thank you, Luke. Just give me one moment to share my screen. Okay, here we are. So let's take a look at some fraud cases that some customers of financial institutions, e-commerce, and basically any kind of online platform already faced this lockdown period, or maybe face it in the future when the most people basically stay at home, stay online, and actively use different online services, as we are right now on this webinar. Of course, most hackers and typical fraudsters also become very active, especially in case of fraud that they can do online, staying at home as well. Let's take a look on some statistics that we have regarding compromised accounts and banking cards from our threat intelligence platform. You can clearly see that the statistics rises from year to year, and especially this year, it was increasing dramatically in some cases. For example, the number of compromised cards increased by 5 times compared to the last year. Almost the same picture with compromised banking accounts and accounts related to e-commerce online portals. What about some statistics related to online fraud itself? Here we are, based on statistics from our top 10 clients in the EMEA region. We see that every 3 sessions out of 100 are related to fraud. Statistics based on detection of abnormal IP anomaly, including use of different proxies, private SOCKS 5 proxies, VPNs, etc., and also infected with malware user devices, especially Android devices. Web bot activity related to credential stuffing, especially use of remote access tools for social engineering attacks, and typical fraud when connected several devices were used to steal money from compromised accounts. And here we are going to look some specific social engineering attacks using different channels and tools. First, what the main goal of all of this, of these attacks? Firstly, it's about getting user credentials like username, password, credit cards, data, any personal information that can be collected, and then use it to further fraud, or maybe sell it on the dark web forum. Also, getting the full access to user device via malware or remote access can be used to steal money from user accounts as well. Or some social engineering tips can be used to convince the victim to transfer the money to the fraudster accounts. So basically, different goals can be proceeded with during the fraud attack. What about covered platforms? Basically, all of them: online, consumer, corporate portals, Android and iOS applications, and of course, 3DS and P2P pages. Using channels are basically SMS, emails, social networks, as fraudsters can use these channels with any kind of attack, including spreading phishing links, malware, and etc. Calls are still popular to get some information from victims, like OTP code, for example, or even more convince victim to transfer the money during the call. Web channel can be used in a different way. Like, first of all, you can buy some advertisement for your phishing pages. Fraudster can hack of popular website to spread malware or steal user credentials with the sniffers, and etc. Instruments are basically well known. It can be phishing, malware, dark web forum, as fraudsters can easily buy some already compromised accounts there, or buy some malware, and etc. Remote access tools, sniffers on the hacked websites, and of course, human trust. A few words about sniffers that I mentioned. Even a year ago, we detected a lot of compromised websites with implemented sniffers to collect users' data like banking cards. You can see that we detected a lot of different sniffer families that were used for it. Some of the statistics really shock. For example, hackers sniffed more than 300,000 cars from the British Airways website, last year. Of course, all leaked data will be used to proceed with fraud attacks to finally steal money from user banking accounts. And P2P and 3DS pages are one of the ways how to do it. They can cash out money by buying some stuff in the internet, like different devices, clothes, or even more, book something, and then get money back on a different card, already fraudster's card. As you know, in some countries, it is possible to book a hotel via booking, for example, and then get money back directly from the hotel on a different card. So this is a way how you can cash out the money. And fraudsters can use only compromised data from sniffers, but not only compromised data from sniffers, but also from different tools and techniques like phishing or malware. Via SMS channel, it is possible to spread anything like phishing URLs or especially links for malware download. The main victims here are Android users, of course. Right now, this is the most popular method to attack users with Android malware, as everything possible when fraudsters got the full access to a mobile device. SMS, push notifications from bank applications, any confidential data. And also, this device can be used to spread the malware further via sending SMSs to the user contact list, which is obviously a very effective method, I think. And by the way, my colleague Andrew will show you today how it works and how it can be detected in real time. Calls are still very popular for fraudsters, especially if they already have some users' data. They can just call the user, present ourselves like bank support and ask anything. For example, banking card number, OTP code, and many other things. Even try to convince victim to install a remote access tool for some kind of security check. I need to mention that phishing pages can spread via any kind of channels, via SMS, email, social networks, search engine, basically any kind of channel can be used for phishing. And interesting thing that with phishing, you can not only collect, fraudsters can not only collect, for example, login, banking card data and password, but also they can send to victim fake OTP page and get access to banking account in live and transfer money from this banking account in live on the back end of phishing. And advertisement is one of the way how to spread phishing, because you can buy just advertisement with a typical keyword. For example, it can be login to online banking of some kind of bank in Google search. So fraudster just can buy advertisement for this specific search request and spread their phishing URLs using advertisement. PC malware still can be used to get full access to users' PC or just to collect some users' data. For example, automatically sniff credit cards from online banking pages and get access to users' password database in browser, and provide basically remote connection as well. So when user just left his PC, hacker fraudster can connect remotely to its PC and, for example, transfer money from his banking account if there is active banking session. Okay, we just covered some use cases, some interesting methods, techniques, and tools that can be used by fraudsters, but let's take a bit about how it can be detected, how it can be prevented. Yeah, this is actually the last slide. After the slide, I'm going to show you some investigation demos, and then we finally swap to real demos with inspection of Android device, with phishing pages, and etc. So, what kind of technologies can be used to detect some cases? First of all, you're supposed to analyze the device itself. So basically, it's about device fingerprinting, and it's not only just typical analysis of some settings in browser or user agent. It's It's a deep knowledge of the device. It's a correlation of different parameters of device. As devices can be updated, user can use different browsers. User can use private mode in browser, or maybe even more. Some fraudsters can use anti-detect browsers and many other tools, actually. So this is a deep device fingerprinting, behavioral analysis, based on fingerprint of the keystroke, fingerprint of the mouse movement, and basically fingerprint of pattern that user has for this specific website. Cross-channel analysis is a very important thing if you want to see the full picture. Yes, so we're supposed to analyze all channels, 3DS pages, P2P pages, corporate and consumer online banking portals, and also iOS and Android applications. In case of bot tools, it is possible to detect some specific non-bot tools, and also it's possible to analyze user behavior and based on that get some anomalies, and these anomalies will say you like this potentially bot activity. Yes, especially if you are talking about web bots, like a smart web bots which can be used to withdraw money from compromised banking accounts. It's also a good idea to correlate information between different customers globally. So suppose you use global user profiling between different customers and basically share information about compromised devices between different companies, not only between banks, but also between e-commerce companies, between crypto exchange companies, and etc. As fraudsters probably will use not only specific one, they will attack not only one specific bank. Of course, they will cover a lot of banks, and maybe they will also use some crypto exchanges to proceed with fraud. Malware detection is a really important thing for web, for Android applications, as user device can be typically infected. Yes, it can be still the same fingerprint for this device, but does it matter if device already infected and basically hacker or fraudster had the full access to this device, so they can see all credentials, they can see OTP codes, and etc. And a few words about techniques and engine itself. So it's supposed to be flexible. It's supposed to be not only static, dynamic, and of course, some machine learning algorithms should be included in this engine, and also some feeds from trusted threat intelligence solutions, like we use in Group IV. We have threat intelligence platform, and of course, we used our own threat intelligence to get the last information about cyber criminals, especially some information about malware, Android malware, different injects that can be used to inject on the web page, and many other things. So let me show you a few use cases. So this is a typical situation when one user used only one PC, and we also collected fingerprint based on the hardware information for the specific PC, and he also used one specific IP. Yes, it's completely normal situation when somebody uses his, for example, banking account, signing from one device, using one IP. He can also use several IPs, it's not a problem as well. And we also collected hardware fingerprint for this specific PC. It is important, I'll show you later why. And also we have global mark here, which is responsible for global hunting between different customers. Okay, let's actually extend the picture and see maybe there are different connections with different other hardware, other PCs, other devices. And yes, here we are. We see that somebody from other devices also signed in this specific account, and even more, some of these devices used many times before to sign in other accounts as well. Like this specific device connected with more than 5 accounts. This one is with 3 accounts, and etc. Yeah, so this is a interesting way how to correlate information between different customers, between different devices. And good example in case of just typical demonstration how you can get the full picture of users' activity. Is it possible to dive into the session? Yes, of course. So here, for example, we have specific event related to some of users, including this one. So basically, it's a technical information about what's happening during this session that I'm showing you right now on this graph. So let's take a look. First of all, you can clearly see that for signing the specific Froster used virtual machine. Yeah. And we also have here information about CPU cores. It's only 2, and probably you know that there are not so many PCs right now that have only 2 CPU cores, which is also abnormal. Some technical information about PC, like I collected fingerprints related to Canvas, related to WebGL, information about IP, user screen, and also user behavior, like his navigations, different tabs, different keys, different keywords that he used. Then we see some events. First of all is signing in. Then we figure out this is a completely new device for the specific user. And then after signing in, we detected that right now there is active RDP connection for this specific session, which basically a remote tool. And remote tool, as I mentioned before, can be used for some kind of social engineering attacks. Then he signed into another account from the same device, and he did it again. And as a result, we have this specific event related to 2 or more users from one device. And the same picture for each session. So here is a connection, basically a picture that we see on production for specific sessions. And you can see a lot of fake devices here, these small purple icons, compromised accounts here, and one real fingerprint of the physical device that actually was used to attack these compromised accounts. So interesting thing that in this case, fraudsters try to spoof specific devices and use the spoofed devices to sign in different accounts. But we collect information about hardware itself. We see this fingerprint of hardware is very similar to these fake devices, and that's how we connected all these devices between each other. And interesting thing that there is also one connection through one user with another picture, basically very similar. So this is another physical device that fraudsters or a group of fraudsters basically used to attack bank clients in this case. So it's also possible to dive into the session from the graph itself and check maybe there are some different tools, maybe it's different specific events related to this activity. Let's take a look. And yes, you can see that in this specific case, fraudsters used optimization tool, which is Selenium. So basically, they optimized all the process of signing in these compromised accounts to steal money from these compromised accounts. Okay, let me also show you another graph here. And this is a good example when we're talking about correlation between different customers, between different banks, between different e-commerce platforms. So you can see here that we have 2 customers. And in both customers, there was a device which is connected to different accounts. So somebody attacked compromised accounts in bank A and also did the same in bank B. And what we have here, we have also connection with IP, but interesting thing here that first of all, the hardware fingerprint is absolutely the same for these 2 cases. And we also have a cookie, which we store on the end user devices. And it's also the same for these devices as well. So we have 2 ways how to correlate, how to share information between different customers. And for example, if, of course, it's possible to clone the cookie, but still we have the hardware fingerprint, which can be used on our backend to understand that devices from several customers are basically the same. And cookies also a very good mechanism. As you see here, for example, hacker Froster didn't clean his browser from cookies. So it also can work. And it's also very good to have a few ways to correlate data between different customers. Okay, I'm turning off the sharing of my screen and hand over to Andrew, as we have a lot of interesting cases that we are going to do today. Andrew, it's your time.
Yep, thanks. Just a couple of moments while I'm preparing and sharing my screen and turning on my microphone and video cam. So please, sorry for that. Hello, everyone. My name is Andrew. I'm an anti-fraud specialist at Group IB. So today we will go through we will go through the second part of our webinar, and it will consist of more interactive things. So it will be really appreciated if you take a part into that. So at first, the first part in our agenda will be the check your device in real time. So we do have different, as Pavel mentioned, we do have different kind of methods in order to collect information from the endpoints of a user, to then correlate it, and in order to find the fraudsters or the non-legitimate activity that is related to the device of a user or the identity of it. So at first, I'd like to share with you the site that you will use in order to connect to it. So for those who is concerned about the real-time analysis of the activity of a user or of a device of the user as well, please follow the link that will be listed, and we will provide you the click or call to action. So we will specify the link to the site within the chat. And more than that, we will share the username and login, so you could use them in order to access the demo site. And so I could show you like the real-time capabilities in from the Secure Bank side. So here you can see the demo Secure Bank demo site. Basically, you can use, right now you should see the call to action right onto your screen, and where the login and password is listed. So what I ask you to do is to go to the sb-demo-site groupib.com. What we are doing, so as well mentioned by Pavel, so we are collecting a lot of data in order to correlate it and in order to find the automated activity, not only by the previously known tools, for example, as the Selenium or the obsolete PhantomJS, but also the most recent ones, because we are relying not only to the statistical patterns, for example, that might be that are used by the voting activity or voting tools, but also we are analyzing the behavior of this within their sessions. So based on that behavior, we will then be able to detect whether it's the malicious activity, just suspicious, legitimate one, or the automated one. And so please follow to the demo site, then go to the login page at the right top corner of yours. Then you can paste the login and password in order to log in. Then you will access like the login page. So basically how it looks like for the user when he accesses your the e-commerce page or the banking page. And so right after that, in this moment, I will I guess that we will take some couple of moments while everyone is connecting and accessing the demo web page. And so that's how it looks for the typical user when he accesses your web application or portal. And so right after that, the JavaScript that is installed on the site is sending the data to the backend. So basically, for understanding, right after I access the page, I do have the related event to it. So basically, it will show like I have access to this account. Basically, it triggers some of the alerts. So, for example, whether this is the first device of the user that was listed, for example, or that was detected, or what was the thing that were changed, for example, what was the activity that was provided there. So what we can do here, as well as you know about the investigation section that we use in order to find the cyber criminals, in order to find any kind of connections between different fraudulent schemes, or how do they operate, for example. So this, yeah, let's check how many people just try to, wow, so many of them. So what we can do here, not only we will provide the triggers related to the appearances of the new devices, for example, for the same user, because yeah, obviously we use the same login and identity of a user right now. So the secure bank will detect and will match or will compare the old values between the new ones. And if there is any discrepancies between the device of a user that was previously mentioned, for example, it will trigger the alert. Basically, we have the comprehensive rule engine that utilize different methods of doing that, and not only the behavioral analysis, but also the more easiest one, let's say. So we do have the identity of a user that has some suspicious activity within this account. After that, I can go to the investigation section in order to find these same devices or to check the information, like how these schemes look like. So basically, here we can see that two devices from the same location. Basically, it's the same device because it has, yeah, basically the same hardware fingerprint. Yeah, we utilize and we collect a lot of data in order to build this comprehensive fingerprint. So we're using a lot of kind of fuzzy hashing to differentiate the device, whether it was updated somehow, for example. So we will provide the matched data between different fingerprints, and if it's similar in some way, we will identify that, and based on this information, you will be able to understand how the fraudster changed his identity, changed his device, and so on and so forth. I see that someone isn't able to access the page. Unfortunately, I just used the same, check whether you have any kind of spaces, maybe while you was copying the values. You just copied the space as well, and so that might be the reason for not matching the user password. So basically, that's how it works in real time. And you must understand that if there is a lot of information coming within a fraud section that collects all this information and all these events, and all these events will be passed to or pushed to the internal systems to check the users, whether they were detected in some kind of fraudulent schemes before. So in conjunction with the information coming from the device of a user that you can then use and that our partners use in their Instinct solution, that is really useful and valuable for understanding whether this device is legitimate or not, or maybe it has some kind of strange activity within this session or with this device, for example. And so we are using different kind of APIs in order to feed the events or push the events to the internal systems or into the transactional anti-fraud solutions of actually any kind of. So that's how it works in real time. And of course, all these events will be triggered and will be pushed to the integrational channel. And so to continue and to follow our agenda, I'd like you to answer the poll that we will rise right into in several seconds. We do have different examples or let's say cases that we'd like to show to you. So as you may know, the mobile Trojans for Android platforms aren't sent to decrease. So basically, it's an increasing threat that is attacking a lot of customers across all the Europe and across all the worldwide, actually. So yeah, one moment. So they might use different methods in order to conduct their kind of activities. And as you might understand, it might be not efficient if you're looking into, or if you only do the hash checking, for example. And so how the conventional mobile malware analysis works. So basically you have the hash of the malware, then you push it into some analysis service, for example, even the open ones, so you already know about them, I guess. And so then you get the results, then you can correlate them, or then you can understand whether this file is malicious or benign. But this kind of action is easily to avoid because you can change the hash, you can modify the version or the file itself. And then if it wasn't checked within antivirus engines and so on, then it will be still be invisible for the protection systems that you have, for example, or for the malware analysis service that you have. And so we utilize different methods here. And as a first example, I will show you the mobile Trojans that you can see here. Here you can see the emulated device of an Android. Basically, I have in it the testing mobile application with our mobile SDK being implemented there. So when we talked about correlation information from different sources or channels, of course, we are able to be integrated in any kind of mobile application for both platforms, even the Android, iOS, and so on. Here we can see the mobile application related to the banking testing application with the mobile SDK being implemented there. So I want to, for example, log in for day 11/11. Then I sign in using the password to access or OTP code, for example. So each of the steps might be then visible for you or for our SDK. So in order to get the patterns of the behavior of the user on a mobile device. Then I want to do a transfer, maybe will it be 100 of something. And then, yeah, we will be able to write into the real-time see events coming from mobile SDK implemented. So basically here is our session that you can see here. Of course, we are able to integrate different channels within one UI. And so here is the last session coming from the mobile SDK. You can see here the identity that I used. Also, before even logged in, the SDK detected the usage of the device emulator. So if some fraudster try to abuse your mobile application, he will use any kind of device emulators or interactive development environment in order to do that. We also triggered the alert about the rooted devices, about absence of screen lock, or that the unknown sources don't load is enabled. And so these events are highly likely might indicate upon the opportunity for the user to install the third-party applications, for example, even if it's modified banking application of yours or not, or any kind of third-party application that might be used to intercept the SMS codes, for example. So, and yeah, I will show you like how it works when we are talking about the mobile Trojans. So I have the wiped phone with the banking application being installed there. Then I want to install one of the malware that we detected within that is right now attacking the European region and some of the countries. Basically, it impersonates as the Flash player. It's called Event Bot, and it has different weapon to conduct its malicious activity. So let's take a look at that. So how the Trojan works. So it tries to conceal its activity. It tries to conceal its icon, for example, to manipulate the victim to install it, for example. So while he's accessing some of the web portal and got the notification that you have to update your Flash player, for example, and And besides that, he or let's say when he tried to upload or this update, he will then upload or download the malicious APK that is the Flash player. After pressing on that, it will trigger and it will ask for the use of the services. So the Flash player, it's the service, so why not? So I will give this permissions to it. After that, I am forwarded to the settings in order to provide this kind of capabilities or this kind of permissions to this Flash player. After I pressing to providing this access, you can see the permissions that it demands to. So basically, such kind of retrieving the information from the screen, any kind of interactions or perform gestures. So, okay, Flash player, might it be that kind of application? But okay, as a user who is not interested in checking the permissions of the application, I will also install it anyway. So we can see that I installed the software, then some actions were performed automatically. And now we see, whoa, yeah, it does a lot of things here. So basically now we see that this Flash player icon just disappeared into the thin air. And basically if I will try to, for example, go to the settings, go to the accessibility services to disable this service of the Flash player, the malicious service, of course, I will still not be able to do that, because the accessibility service that is turned on right now, or that is used by this Trojan, provide them the ability to interact with the device of a user. So basically right now, this simulated device is under the hands of the fraudster, and it has the connections to it through the C2 servers and so on. So after I access the banking application, for example, let's revert to the starting page. After I access it again, for example, sign in, then press the password and try to transfer some money and so on and so forth. Let's check how it looks from the graphical interface. So I will update the page and show you that this device in this session is marked as highly risky for conducting some kind of suspicious activity. Actually, if we open that, we can see in the preview that we have the mobile banking Trojan took place onto this device. So basically, we're conducting not only the permission check for each file. If the machine learning classifier will detect some discrepancies between the needed permissions and the ones that were demanded, it will then analyze this malware not from the hash of the file, but also we use different methodologies to do that. So basically, we will use the APK fingerprint. And so if this malware will be updated further, or maybe the same developer of the malware used the same certificate, the technical information for deploying the APK file, for example, it will be still, and we will still detect that. So even if the new version of this Trojan was found, for example, on some gray application market, for example, we are still able to detect that. So what we can see here is the use of the accessibility service. So basically, the Trojan that I showed you is the mobile banking Trojan, the event bot, that is using different methodologies in order to conduct its activities. So basically, we're providing not only the event itself, but also the scoring to feed it into the solutions of our partner in order to understand how malicious this event is, for example. Yeah, of course. And of course, we will provide a category, the description on how it might be used, for example. So this kind of solutions as Instinct will use this information in order to understand, should we provide any kind of additional checks for this application, for example, or not. And so, yeah, I told you about the functions. So the event bot used different kind of functions in order to conduct the ATS, or automated transfer system service activity. So such as the accessibility service. So basically, it's the service that is used in order to provide the additional capabilities to interact with the device for those who are experiencing some inconvenience to use that. So basically, this service is usually used by the Trojans in order to conduct their this kind of activity. So if this application is using the accessibility service, it's highly likely that this might be a Trojan. So correlating different triggers and correlating the information after the application analysis, we can provide the evidences that this device was actually hacked or infected, and so the data of the user or the account of the user might be already exfiltrated into the C2 server of the fraudster. Of course, the event bot as well, checking the presence of some banking application onto the mobile device. And so if it detects some of the APKs related to the banking applications, it will then send to the C2 server, if it's alive, the command that I need to download the web fake. And I guess that you already, that this term is really familiar to you. So the web fake is an overlay activity. So when the user trying to access or open or run the banking application, the Trojan intercepts this action and pop up the window that it's a lookalike to the legitimate application, while being absolutely harmful. So all the credentials that will be passed by the user will be then transferred to the C2 server of the cyber criminal. These credentials, of course, might be then found onto the dark web forums and so on. So, and from the synergy that you already seen on the Pavel's presentation, we can use our threat intelligence in order to detect the usage of the compromised credentials, for example, or compromised credit cards. And so you can be aware or warned about this kind of occurrences if they happened onto your user side. So I hope that I covered the mobile Trojan wholly, and I guess, and I hope that it was clear to you, for you to understand. Let me check how many time is left, so we could proceed with the second example or use case regarding the phishing. Whew. So, what's regarding the phishing? There are a lot of points that are used, or channels that are used by the fraudsters in order to conduct their kind of activity, to steal the data of the users, and so on and so forth. So one of the example that we can provide to you is the phishing resources. So the first part of the phishing attack is to create some service or some web portal that is look-alike as the banking web page, for example, in order to manipulate the victims, or to create some additional service who will then suggest you to get the additional money or tax refund, for example, and so on and so forth. So in this example, I will use the one fraudster infrastructure that I'm chasing for last 2 months, I guess, have been chasing. So because it has like the really interesting backend or really interesting infrastructure that it has. So basically, it has the backend that that is accessed by all the sites and all the services that it already hosted, in order to provide the new links for the prepared infrastructure. So, for example, I see the email, the mail notification that you received the transfer through the express mail service. So the transfer amount is 98,000 rubles and so on. So to get that, I have to enter the card number. So, okay, let's go there. Okay, we can proceed with any kind of number of a card. So my card number is 1. So, okay, let's proceed with that. I guess here the fraudster tried to show how the transaction works, and for a bank or for the user. So it will like wait for some. Oops, sorry for, it will translate itself, and I hope. Sorry for non-English letters. And so here, for example, after some time, we got the message that unfortunately we can proceed with this transaction. You have to pay the commissions to the bank. And so, okay, why not? Because I want my 98,000. Why not? Okay, then I click onto that, then I am redirected. And so I redirected to another site. Basically, it's the second chain within, the second step within this chain. Just remember that and keep that in mind, like how many steps it involves. After I click onto the proceed, there was the check to the API, to actually the request to the back end of the fraudster to provide me the alive link that is online right now, and that can provide me the as you can see here, that can provide me the ability to pass my data, for example, in order to get my taxes or a fund or something like that. So, okay, I will put down or input my data. Okay, my number is 111. So, okay, go to the payment. So here we are transferred to another site that also is connected with this chain. Basically, here we can see the demand for the transfer. Actually, at first it asks you to fill the BIN number of your card, so it can then create the automated requests to to provide you the forward to forward you to the site of your bank. So after I press this button, I will be redirected to the page where I should pass my card number. After it checks that I have the legitimate BIN bank number, and so on and so forth. So after I click on the Pay button, I will be redirected to the legitimate site, and my credit card number will be transferred to the fraudster, and that might be really not so good for me, of course. So here I want to show you like how it works and how it can be counteracted or halted, how this activity can be detected and even prevented. So I will use some kind of script. It will wait for me to press the button, and then I will be redirected. I don't want to be redirected to the site of my bank. I will be redirected to the demo site that you already seen. So, for example, I will use my card data, really useful card, I'd say. And so after I press the Pay button, I am redirected to the banking page, for example. And here I could see like the payment or the transfer page to conduct my payment and so on. So basically the user who was convinced to transfer the money will see the legitimate service, of its bank, and then it will then it will transfer the money with a wish to obtain some additional money, but unfortunately it will lead to the loss. So how it works and how it looks like. So I was redirected, and basically the user was redirected. And basically, we are able to counteract the phishing from two sides, or from two steps. The first one is when the fraudster is preparing his infrastructure. So at first, I mentioned that it can provide you with the lookalike banking application or lookalike domain name, or use them in conjunction to be more to provide more confident or resilient result for the users. And so to do that, they have to use the phishing kits that are sold on the dark web that you can build yourself, and so on. Basically, it's the script that will use the shell code to access your bank page, then copy all the source code, including the styles of the page, including the JavaScript that is listed there, and so on and so forth. Then the fraudster will use this code in order to host it somewhere to prepare the attack, to prepare the scripts to conduct it correctly, and so on. So at this time, if the fraudster copied the source code of the banking page, it will copy our JavaScript as well. And while he was setting his service up, we will see connections coming from suspicious domain name that is not listed as trusted. So we do have, and we will provide this URL. So basically, you will be able to see the preparation for the attack before it even happened. The second part of this is the active check of where the users came from. So basically, in my example, you could see how I was transferred from the phishing resource to the legitimate demo site page. How it will looks like. So we're collecting and we are sending a lot of data. Unfortunately, due to, I guess, a lot of sign-ins, there is such kind of strange, silly activity here. But we can see the event that is related to the fake service payment, and that is related to to my user when I was logged in. So we can see here that this user were transferred from phishing site, from phishing resource, and even will provide you the referrer. So we are checking the referrer from every user that came or that was redirected from some suspicious service. With the help of our proprietary threat intelligence, we do have the snapshots of the whole internet. We're scanning the whole IPv4 and IPv6 address space in order to find this prepared infrastructure of cyber criminals. And if they use the same patterns in order to do that, we will see the appearance of the infrastructure or adding the new nodes that are related to previously known adversary, for example. Knowing that, we are able to check these referrer links where the user came from, where the users came from, in order to find the evidences, whether it was the phishing resource or not. So then we will have the list of these phishing resources. Then they will be, the truly malicious URLs will be added into the list of suspicious services, for example, or the phishing resources. And while it is alive, you will be able to see whether the user came from it or not, or use our threat intelligence to even take down the site, for example. So that were some kind of examples and use cases that might be used in order to counteract the fraud and different kind of frauds. So thank you for your attention. I want you to, here we will have the Q&A session afterwards. So it's starting right now, I guess, as I see. And I wanted to mention as well some of them or do some comments, but yeah, let me at first answer the questions of our participants.
Yeah, actually, I think I can help you with this specific question.
Of course.
First of all, I suppose not every one of you are actually familiar with this handheld devices. Here's my one, for example. So basically, the handheld device is a typical device that you can use like additional factor of verification to the online banking platform, like I have here. So you're supposed to put here a card, and then you will have like second factor to authorize to your online banking. Of course, it is very secure, right? Because you're supposed to have this physical device to second in your banking account, right? But it's all about user experience, because for sure you don't want to keep this device always with you, right? And it's not really good things in case of daily experience, yes, because right now we basically use our banking accounts every day. And can you imagine, like, for each operation you're supposed to use this device? Yeah, it's not, I think it's something from the last century. The last century. So
yeah, we're talking about decreasing the user friction. Basically, we can use this device fingerprinting in order to provide the results upon the legitimacy of this device. And so with these indicators or with these events, you will be able to integrate it into your adaptive authentication, for example, in order to bypass the additional authentication steps, in order to decrease this friction of a user, the customer friction, and so they won't need to keep this handheld device with himself every time he wants to transfer the money or transfer the money internationally, for example. So basically, it's all about providing not only the capabilities in order to hunt for the fraud, for example, but also to increase the customer experience. And that's the main point in order to get rid of this conventional things as the handheld devices for getting the OTP codes and so on and so forth. So I guess that we provided the answer.
Not on all questions.
Yeah,
Here is a next question.
So how we can protect mobile application from Trojans invasion? So if we're talking about the protection of the mobile application of the bank, for example, so it's all about the modification of the banking application that can be done by the fraudsters or by the hackers who use their software development skills in order to modify your banking application to then, for example, abuse your mobile API or somehow replace or substitute the fields, for example, or to abuse your system, basically. And so we can also counteract it with the usage of our preemptive proxy and while analyzing the traffic coming from your mobile applications. And if we're talking about the Trojan invasions on the mobile devices,
yeah, I think this is a first layer of protection. Yeah, you can protect your own application with different techniques and your mobile API as well. But still, when user device is infected, they have the visibility of other things. They have the contact list, they have access to notes, they have access maybe to their passwords as well, if there is some kind of password manager installed on the device, and they will have access as well to OTP codes. So it's not, of course, you can protect your mobile application, and it makes sense to do it, but it's not enough if you want to secure user sessions. You're supposed to detect some real malicious activity on the end user device, and based on this information, you should make a decision in case if there are any active transactions and etc. Using some kind of sessional anti-fraud tool as we provide Secure Bank, and of course make a final decision to, for example, block all or limit transactions using GBG Instinct.
Absolutely true. So let's move on to the next question. 1 moment. Do you have any opinions of weaknesses of non-Android devices, Apple iPhones, and etc.? So if we're talking about any kind of other devices or operating system, if they use the same code base, for example, or the same C+ or C# or Java-oriented code, we can be integrated there as well. And if we're talking about the Apple devices precisely, you must understand that they have the really solid security and the restrictions in order to limit the visibility or the access to any kind of environment of the device itself. But still, even with that restrictions, we're able to detect and correlate information coming from the iPhones, whether it was jailbroken, for example, or maybe also from the Apple device perspective, there might be use of screen sharing options in order to conduct the social engineering attacks. And this kind of functions, or the use of this kind of functions, also can be detected by the mobile SDK if it is implemented on an application that is stored on an Apple device. So, of course, let's say we can operate with the less information that we obtain from the Apple iPhones, but it's still relevant data. It's still efficient in order to detect the automated activities, to detect the abuse, or to detect this, to use our detection capabilities in order to find this threats, let's say. So, if you have, do you have any to add?
Nothing.
Perfect. Thank you.
In this case.
I guess what for the time, unfortunately, yeah, I guess that there is a lot of questions, actually. Luke, nice to see you here. And they're coming and coming, so I'm not sure, like maybe we should, let's say, linger the Q&A session even to answer all of them. But right now, I guess that we almost run out of time.
We already ran out of time.
Yeah, I think unfortunately we have run out of time. What I would suggest though is that between the parties, GBG and Group IB, will put together answers to those questions that remain unanswered, and we'll include that then in the follow-up that we're going to provide. So on that note, conscious that we ran slightly over time, there will be a full follow-up that we're going to provide to everyone by email, and that's going to contain a link to an on-demand version of this webinar, as well as all of our contact details. So if there's anything that's been discussed today that you'd like to understand a little bit more about, or perhaps that we can provide more information on, you'll have the contact details to get in touch. And as well as that, as I say, we'll provide some answers to the questions that have been asked, but we've unfortunately run out of time to address today. So that leaves really from me just to close off the webinar. I hope it's been of great value to yourselves. I've certainly found I've learned a lot from what Andre and Pavel covered just there. So thank you very much for your involvement, and thank you to everyone for attending and taking a little bit of time out of your day. I hope it's as I say been insightful, and we'll wrap up there and hope to speak to you all soon. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you everyone for participating. Thank you, Luke, for the insights that you provided to everyone. And also, I want to ask you to do, not you personally, Luke, all of you, to pass our last poll, the survey of what is the threats that you facing right now during this post-COVID or during this COVID time. And maybe you have some issues or struggles of your own, and maybe that ones that you want to solve, for example, with the solutions of this type, of this kind. So we will provide this poll, and if you have the time, please answer or leave the feedback leave the feedback to us. So it will be really appreciated. So yeah, thank you everyone. Have a nice day. Was pleasure to show it all to you, and hope we'll see each other again. Goodbye.
Yeah, goodbye.